Great. Well, thanks, Ali. Do I jump in now? Thank you so much. It's always a bit weird doing it all via Zoom, but hopefully we'll be up that way early next year. Now the borders are open, so we're based in Victoria, but operate all over Australia. So I'm Sam Marwood. On the screen here is Tam. She's my sister and also is part of Cultivate Farms as well. And just thank you very much for coming along. You've all no doubt very busy running around with your own work. So to give of your midday is very much appreciated. So what I'll do, I'll share this presentation. I'll talk about 10, 15 minutes. We'll get Adam Keane in, who's from Suncorp. He'll talk about a couple of case studies of farmer matches. And then really I just want to open it up for discussions before we finish up at 1 at your end. So I'll click this button and just share the screen. Welcome. Let's see if this is working. How are we going, Ali? Can everyone hear me still? I'll just click this and I'll get cracking. So we're Cultivate Farms. As Ali said, we're a matchmaking service. 5 years, I started this with a couple of good mates of mine, trying to find a way to make farm ownership possible for young people, and realize that we can do that by sharing ownership, by getting aspiring farmers who don't own their farm and want to own their farm, and connect them with retiring farmers and investors. We happen to get a grant with the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, and it is about finding farm matches up in the Great Barrier Reef catchment, specifically the Herbert catchment, and work through, and I'll talk through the details, but work through hopefully some farm ownership transition scenarios and case studies with 3 farmers is our goal over the next 12, 14 months. This talk, we did a one for young farmers just the other day, a couple of weeks ago, and this one's specifically focused with retirement age farmers and their advisors, and trying to discuss what we're doing and whether this might be of interest to farmers who maybe like the idea of sharing ownership and aging on farm. So the purpose of this is today is to explain what our project is, but spend a lot of time discussing whether this is suitable, you think, for retiring farmers, and also to discuss with yourselves also as farm advisors. I understand a lot of people here today are actually advisors to farmers, and we think that's great because you're the ones who will be able to identify the risks and opportunities for farmers and help them think through whether this might be an option for them. So I'll talk about Cultivate Farms, I'll talk about the specific opportunity, and then and Ali's and Lawrence have already given an outline around HCPSL's role in the project, but we'll touch on that as well. So the project, as I said, over the next 14 months, by the end of next year, we want to have 3 farm matches. So aspiring farmers and retiring farmers connected and working through some sort of farm ownership transition. And I'll talk through the details of what that is and confirming, we're backed by the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, who are really intrigued by this concept. So the underlying this is that they want to help support water quality improvement, and part of this will be supporting the landholders and the aspiring farmers to adopt farming practices which help to improve water quality as well. So what we've heard, we've known Lawrence and Ali for over 18 months now, and Lawrence has been following our journey as Cultivate Farms the last couple of years and reached out a while ago, and we're just talking about projects, and I heard what Lawrence is saying, and these are some of the points he mentioned, that that retirement age farmers do want to age on farm, that there are potentially farmers out there who don't have family to hand the farm onto, or whose kids don't want it or don't have kids. And so there's potentially retirement age farmers who are looking for an option to be able to stay on their farm. The other thing we heard is that there are next gen farmers who want to own their farm but don't have the money to be able to do that. And this is an issue across Australia. We've got 1,300 aspiring farmers on our database across the country, with farmers who want to own their farm but just don't have the capital. The other thing we heard is that there's probably not many case studies of these farm transition models in the region. And so that's what we'd love to try and uncover is find some from outside the region and see if we can get some going within the Herbert catchment. So what we do is a matchmaker. Here's a diagram of the 3 parties we work with. Aspiring farmers, we sort of motivate them and get them going to say, yep, you can own a farm. It might not just be by you saving up all the money. Go and partner with someone who can either provide access to the farm or can help to purchase that farm with you. So they're investors and retiring farmers. I think investors, were the ones we think about are people local in a community, or people with who want to do good. They're the sort of people we're uncovering more and more. They love the idea of co-owning a farm, not running it, but knowing that they're supporting a next generation farmer in a regional community and growing good food. So we're uncovering more and more of them across Australia, and hopefully we'll be able to get a few investors eager as well as retiring farmers in this program. What we do day to day is provide hope. That's probably the number one thing that we do, is create a lot of content and do videos like this to get to aspiring farmers and say ownership is possible. So stick at farming, work on a farm for years and build your skills. And then you can try and uncover your own opportunities, and we'll help you as well to get on your farm. So we're creating a lot of content around that hope concept, stick at it. We then encourage farmers to get farm ready, make sure they work on farm, get the skills they need to show they can run a farm. So when they do get in front of a retiring farmer or an investor, they can straight away tell that they are good enough and they're someone they'd want to partner with. And then thirdly is the matching. Like, we find retirement age farmers come to us, investors come to us, as well as aspiring farmers. So we do that matching ourselves, but also we encourage next gen farmers to do the matching themselves. So get out in the community and find their own farmers and investors. Our big vision is around rejuvenating regional communities. We think farm ownership is one of the reasons why young people leave, is that they can't own their farm, so they go off and do something else. So we're trying to break down barriers around ownership, and we think they're mental barriers mainly. And that if you go out and ask people, who knows what could happen, get out there and ask retirement age farmers, and get out there and ask potential investors, and doors will open. And that's what we're proving. And that's what we're hoping this project will be able to inspire more people, that ownership is possible, and let's stick at it, and let's get and attract, bring back and attract more next-gen farmers to communities. Momentum we've built as an organisation over the last few years is 1,300 aspiring farmers on our database. We've made 14 matches across the country. We have around 20 on the go. Hopefully we're going to make those matches soon. We run this Cultivate program, which I'll talk about in a second as well, but I think it's one of the first sort of farm pitching investment programs. We had 12 investors at our last event a month or so ago, with 7 farmers pitching to those investors. And we're hopefully going to get at least 2, probably 3 farmers backed by investors over the next few months, which is really exciting. We're growing attention, and we're hearing also that a lot of offline matches are happening that we're not involved in, but we're just supporting people to think like this, and people going out there and making their own matches, which is really, really exciting. This we can unpack as well with you today, but I just want to show what we mean by shared ownership. And we don't have one set model. In fact, we don't necessarily get involved in the details of the arrangements of how these deals happen. We really focus on matching people who get along, so they can work through the details with people like yourselves, lawyers and accountants and advisors, to say, if you've got 2 parties that can see there's something here in terms of sharing ownership, then just know that there are, I've got 5 examples here. There's probably a dozen different ways that ownership can be shared and transition of ownership can happen. We're talking about lease to buy, equity, vendor finance, share farming, long-term lease. All those different technical arrangements are available. We just wanted to say to people that solutions are out there in terms of those arrangements. But the primary thing is, how do you get 2 couples, or how do you get 2 farmers to even meet in the first place and agree that they'd like to share ownership? And I guess that's what we focus on, is encouraging those discussions, which sometimes are tough, and try and match people who get along. Because these deals are like getting married, aren't they? So you want to make sure you're being matched with the right person, and you're comfortable with whatever arrangement unfolds. The bottom line we always say is, make sure it's all written down, make sure you've got your own advisors involved, and make sure your family are very comfortable with this. That's just our number one, and we don't get involved in the details. We just give advice and ideas on where they could go, but make sure that all parties have their experts supporting them. Some examples, I'm just going to run through 2. Adam Keen's going to go through a couple more from his point of view with Suncorp, and how he's managed to do some vendor finance deals with debt. But there's one farm here, 3,500 acres in central Victoria. Judy and Charlie Hocking came to us and said that their kids don't want the farm, but they want to age on their farm, and they want to stay on their farm forever. So they said, could you find us a farmer to share ownership? And we promoted it, and within 2 weeks they found a farmer that they sort of knew but got to know really well, and now they've got an equity deal where this young couple are going to own this $10 million property over the next 10, 20 years, which is really exciting. And that's quite simple. Like, it can be quite simple what happens here. As long as people get along, you can work out almost any opportunity. And the second is a share farming arrangement. Sorry, my computer's being a little bit slow. It's a share farming arrangement with at Hazelbrae in Tasmania, where the farmers are in their early 40s actually, and they just want to get off and do something else. And so they asked us to be part of helping to find farmers, and we found them a couple who are now doing a share farming arrangement with them. And that was quite straightforward in that they had advisors who worked through it all. Our job was to uncover those people who get along, and now they're working out this deal of owning and sharing the profits of the business. This case is not about the land, it's just about that sharing in the business. Again, apologies, a bit slow. Here we go. So we developed a document which we're happy to, and we will share as well, around thinking through this sharing ownership concept in the Great Barrier Reef. And in that, we have this bit of a guide on the things to work through. And these are the discussions we want to have with yourselves: is what do you need to consider for this idea of sharing ownership? We understand it can be quite a confronting idea for many farmers, but for those who are willing to think about it, we want to guide them through it. And so we've come up with these 9 points here, and there's probably lots more, but we've tried to step through, all the things you should think about when wanting to share ownership with a next generation farmer. And we won't go through this here, but things like your vision, are your family happy with it, what time frames, income, tax consideration, health consideration. So all these things that farmers need to think through to be able to stay on their farm and hand over or start to hand over ownership. And we're hoping this will be a really positive thing for many farmers, that they get to stay on their farm. They still get an income. They don't have to get a big dump of $5 million or whatever it is from the sale and have to deal with all the tax and what do you do with that money, that they've still got that money invested into their property, which they know and understand. So we're hoping there's plenty of positives there. But we also want to make sure that these farmers are considering this with their eyes wide open, and people like yourselves are out there supporting them, thinking through these options. So we'll develop this guide, and we'll again love to send that around and get your thoughts on whether that's useful as well. So the next slides are really around the project and how we're going to unfold. And I've only got a couple more minutes left. It won't take too long, but we'll talk about how we're going to get aspiring farmers and uncover them in the Herbert, how we're going to uncover retiring farmers, and then how that matchmaking will happen. And then hopefully with our 3 matches that we make, how we're going to work with them and yourselves or whoever's their advisors are to try and see if we can get some sort of ownership transition happening. So with aspiring farmers, we're out there now, and you might have seen some articles about us already, and we had our event a couple of weeks ago, but we're out there talking to next gen farmers who want to own their farm, and they're out there and they're definitely eager, and we're definitely hitting a need. What we're going to do in February is kick off our Cultivator program with those farmers and get them to develop a pitch. So they'll be there writing a plan for a specific farm. The farm doesn't necessarily have to be for sale. It's more just to show, hey, here's a farm, here's how it's going to make money, here's why I'm a good farmer, and here's what I'm going to do. And we'll use that and to take to retirement age farmers. We're even going to run a pitching program with some investors as well, and see if we can get some matches that way. And part of this is just to encourage these aspiring farmers that you are good enough, just show you're good enough, get words on paper, and that we think even if we don't match a lot of these farmers, we're going to be building their confidence, and hopefully they'll be going around trying to find their own matches, and we'll love to support them ongoing as well anyway. And obviously the matching will happen hopefully probably mid next year and year onwards. With retiring farmers, and again, the point of today's discussion is that we want to talk to advisors, and we know of farmers, that's why they have advisors, is to give them wisdom on what they should and shouldn't do. And that's why we want to discuss this concept to see if it is something that you yourselves might want to take to retirement age farmers, just as another option in the tool belt for what they want to do with their farm. Selling the farm and walking away is a really great option for many, and probably the preferred in many ways. But we're finding that just by saying, hey, you can share ownership and transition over time, it's a real eye-opener for many farmers who haven't really thought about it, and hopefully will be a really, really positive thing, like we're already uncovering for your community, for the retiring farmers, and obviously for the aspiring farmers. So we're getting out and talking to yourselves. We'd love to chat one-on-one over the next month or so to talk about, with this project and the concepts behind it. We'd then love to encourage retirement age farmers to think about this over the next 6 months while the pitches are being developed, to get a list of retiring farmers that we'll just talk to one-on-one. We understand confidentiality needs as well. We won't be shouting this across the country that these retiring farmers are signing up. But we just want to talk to these farmers and work through the positives and negatives and see if they'd be willing at least to look at the pictures. So these pictures will be coming from aspiring farmers around April next year. And we'd love to be able to just put them in front of them, a 3-minute video and a document for them to even just consider. And then hopefully out of that, some of the retiring farmers will say, yeah, I like the look of Mary and Joseph and Brian, and I'll match up with them and see if I can have a chat. And hopefully out of that, some matches will start to be uncovered. When those 3 farms that we have, and we're happy to do more if more come, but if 3 matches happen, we'll sit down and get those farmers to meet each other, have a coffee, meet 2 or 3 times, make sure the advisors are meeting as well, and just work through the relationship side of things and start kicking around concepts of sharing. And then hopefully over time, we'll be able to support them to work through a match. Probably many of them might not go ahead because there's a clash of personalities or visions for their farm, which is fine. But our job is to try and find those like-minded people to keep having those discussions. And then if we do get through the matching, they really like each other and they want to work through a farm transition plan, we've got some funding to get some people like Impact Ag who are farm investment advisors to help work through some scenarios as needed alongside the farmers advisors. And HCPSL will be helping as well with technical support. And if we need, we've got access to investors, and Adam Keane is going to join us as well around debt and put financiers in front of these farmers as well to see if there's some more support that can be provided in these transitions. So out of all this, over the next 14 months, we're hoping to have those 3 farms, not necessarily perfectly matched, a deal with a bow on it, but at least connected, and these farmers having some really positive discussions with hope of a match happening maybe in 2022. Just on Cultivator, these are the 4 things we'll be looking at with our aspiring farmers. So we'll be getting them to talk about themselves, about their farm, about the food they'll grow, and then the finances. They'll be doing a 5-year financial model. So that's it. This is the last slide. I think the biggest point I wanted to make here is that we get that this is a really tricky conversation for many retiring farmers to think about. It's very emotional and a big concept to share ownership. And we're very conscious of confidentiality, and that's something we want to reiterate with any of these clients that you might have, for example, that we can do one-on-one phone calls just with ourselves and just talk about the opportunity, and we won't be sharing names with anybody, making sure it's all appropriate. So that is it. I would love, no doubt I've got questions. I'm trying to think the best way to do from here. I've just stopped sharing, but I might just jump. Ali, you okay? Do you reckon we just have a chat with Adam now and then throw it open for questions? Unless there's any burning questions now, happy to jump over to yourselves. Any questions? Otherwise, we'll go to Adam. And Adam, you're there, mate. Hopefully your audio is working okay.
Can you hear me, mate?
Yeah, I can hear you. Everyone else can hear Adam?
Yeah.
Perfect. So Adam Keane, and I'll get you to introduce yourself as well, Adam, but we've known each other probably a bit over a year now. Went up to Gundawindi and did a bit of a road trip around this sharing ownership, and we're next gen farmers. And Adam did a presentation after me along the very same lines around how do you share ownership, and I just found it really inspiring. And Adam has a number of case studies of farmers he has worked through around sharing ownership and how the bank, in this case Suncorp, have come in to help find a creative solution. And I've just found this really empowering, really inspiring, and to know that there are people out there with creative solutions to try and find them for parties that want to work out a deal. So Adam, I've asked you to come up with a couple of case studies, and I've heard them before, which is why I wanted to talk through them. But mate, if you're okay, just to give a little bit of a bio about yourself and why you're working on these deals, and then just a couple of them, just to give some case studies of what might be possible at the end of this program.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Well, my name's Adam Keane. I'm the district manager for Southwest Queensland for Suncorp Bank. We're obviously, a proud Queensland agricultural bank. We've been in the game for 110 years. So I guess, one of the reasons why, I sort of hit it off with Sam and this project of his is obviously, it's really tough for young people to break in to the market, and if you don't inherit something, or have a wealthy family that you can really look under 100 rocks before you find the perfect one to lift up. But I have got a couple of examples that we can potentially bust a few myths on about the role of traditional finance in some of this shared ownership type model that Sam and his team are putting together across the country. So I guess the first example is probably one that's more traditional in terms of vendor finance type arrangement. But I guess it does speak to the appetite of the banks. And I'll talk broadly about banks, but particularly Suncorp and my team. But, elderly industry participant was an existing customer of ours, no children, so had no one to leave his business or his property to. He didn't want to just sell it to the usual suspects, didn't want the neighbour coming and buying it up, and wanted to provide an opportunity to, a young land manager with similar values to himself. He searched around his community, canvassed all of the local events, was pretty open about what he wanted to achieve in his community, trying to uncover the right young people. Eventually, a young local family who were working for another grazier emerged, had the similar land management values to himself, and eventually a deal was brokered where his business and his property were sold to that young family with a mix of traditional funding and vendor finance terms. And that meant that 100% of that purchase price plus the costs were funded. So the young family didn't have anything to put into that transaction. And because of the willingness of the vendor to take terms, we were able to find a situation that was mutually beneficial and delivered ownership of that property to the young family, and meant that the retiring farmer was able to stay living in his house on the property and keep a close eye on what was going on. Because as I said, the management value that he had was to be carried on by that young family. So, just a good example of what's possible from a vendor finance perspective if you've got the right parties willing to negotiate and work through that stuff. And then secondly, I guess the second option is probably talks a little bit more about what is possible for retiring farmers if they do have some extra cash or want to support young people but don't want to fully sign over the property. And this talks about a story of a young couple. They had no family history in agriculture or backing again, but they always dreamt of owning their own agricultural enterprise, invested in some real estate from a young age. So, made smart decisions early to set themselves up financially. They did operate, a small herd of cattle on agistment just to show that they were in the industry. They did work, for agricultural companies. They upskilled themselves, ended up, they're sort of well known for their industry knowledge and technical expertise nowadays. But again, spoke openly about their dream, worked closely with their accountant, their bank manager, and other producers in their region. And through that industry involvement and connections, found 3 other parties involved in agriculture who were willing to support their dream in a joint ownership model. And they now, operate a 7,000 head cattle business across 3 properties with a market value of sort of 35 million bucks. And over time, those people that have invested in that business will be returned their capital, and the young family will increase their ownership in that business over time, and hopefully to a point where they own it outright. So yeah, there's a couple of examples just how retiring farmers can go about it with the help of traditional lenders, I guess.
Oh, sorry, I had to unmute. It's brilliant. I love hearing those stories, and I've always got questions, but I'm thinking I'd love to open it to the floor and just have a casual discussion around this project, even those deals that Adam's been able to support pulling together. I guess one of the questions I'd love to throw out to you all is, in general, does this program sound like it's achievable? Are we up against it? Do you think this would be of interest for farmers in the Herbert region, particularly in exploring sharing ownership?
Do you think it's going to work, or do you think
there's no doubt there's an aging population like Western farms. This will be quite unique. It will be quite unique for the community. So I'm not quite sure how it will be received.
Yeah. Did you get that, Sam?
And is it are these sort of discussions had? Is this sharing ownership concept put out there very much, or I just keep thinking from an advisor's point of view. I'm assuming you put a list of all the options going forward with the farm. Is this idea of sharing farm ownership with a next generation farmer or someone else quite common? I hear it's leasing is quite common, but the idea of vendor finance or equity, etc., probably is not.
Vendor finance, yes. Leasing and share farming, quite common. Anything beyond that would be new to the district.
Shared equity. The problem with shared equity is trying to find. You mentioned that there was a number of people in that conglomerate that had the same ideals and I suppose the same end goal. I think that's probably the point that would be difficult to negotiate, to get people with the same ideals and the same direction on the way they want to go with their farm. That's going to be a bit of a stumbling block.
That's right, and that's why we've realised, just with Cultivate Farms in general,
overnight those transactions.
You go, Adam. So say that again.
Oh, sorry, we're all catching up on this bloody internet. But yeah, I was just agreeing with you, I guess, Sam, that those deals don't happen overnight, and they take patience and they take a lot of meetings, and yeah, you're right. It's certainly not common, but I guess they are out there. Is probably the message that I'd like to just reiterate.
And that's it, and that's why we as Cultivate Farms, we didn't know what it meant to share. How do you make it possible for someone to own a farm? And we realised it is purely, the 90% of this is around relationships and finding those people you would be willing to share with, and that's, I guess, why we'd spend a lot of our time on the relationship side of things. And so that, just you're talking then, to have someone willing to do an equity deal, to me that equals time and a lot of hunting, doesn't it? So it is a higher effort deal, an opportunity to pull together. But hopefully one with lots of benefits, compared to simply, selling up and walking away or setting up a lease arrangement. So that's probably one of the thoughts we've had on this, is that it is more of a mentally draining more process than any of the others. But we're hoping the positive, social benefits and personal benefits will help balance that out. Are there any risks that come to mind? And when we talk about this sort of stuff, and you talking to your own, clients, for example, what are the big risks other than finding the right people? Are there many, or in some ways, is this relatively straightforward once you've found a farmer that you want to work with? What are those risks that might come to your mind as we work through this?
Partnerships control. If it's going to be a joint equity and you're going to have different personalities on the title, so to speak, is someone supposedly in control and running the operation, or how do disputes resolve? I mean, you have a fairly complicated deed to put together. I would have thought a partnership deed clarifying how that's going to work. Because even when partnerships are running smoothly, there's going to be disagreements, and that's always often difficult. And in Queensland with land ownership, if you own 1/10 of the property or 9/10 of the property, you've still got the same rights to it. So just because you've got a higher percentage of ownership doesn't mean you've got greater control than someone else on the land itself. And that's why I think partnership deed, partnership deed would be pretty important on how that's going to work, if it's going to be joint equity on the land itself.
No, absolutely agree. You know, what are the exit strategies when something goes wrong as well? Maybe, you know, parties realise they don't get along, and making sure those exits are mapped out from the very start and all agreed to. Yeah, I think you're touching on that. You know, the governance ideas, aren't you, around who makes the day-to-day decisions? Is there a 10-year plan? Is there a yearly plan? Monthly reporting? All that sort of stuff needs to be clarified and mapped out from the start. And that's what we'd love to be able to, you know, at least guide or support in those discussions if we find those farmers willing to do this. But I think they're for us the mandatory things that we work on all the time when we make these matches as well.
Sam, that case study that I spoke about with the investment type model, certainly there's a very hefty shareholder deed in place for that, and how shares can be passed on, and who is accountable for all those day-to-day operational things. And I think that's a really important way to manage it for people, is to have something that's very, very black and white.
And
with the ones that you have done, what age demographic have you been dealing with?
in terms
of coming in and going out?
Well, probably it's probably the same whether it matches or even the people on our network, but we're probably talking about farmers in their 30s to 40s for the aspiring farmers. So ones that have got, you know, 10 years or so of experience and really confirm they want to do this and they do want to own their farm. And then retiring farmers, you know, there's that Hazelbray one, they were in their 40s. And so they're still sort of involved, but they want to go off and do other things. And, you know, the ages range from, you know, 60s to 80s is probably the main age range for retiring farmers we talk to. But I think from us, you know, we encourage our farmers to be ready and be good enough, but also after a while we've realised these matches are really a personal thing. So it's not really up to us to tell a retiring farmer who they should or shouldn't work with. We just want to encourage them to think about it, and then encourage aspiring farmers to put themselves out there. Like, don't put the no in someone else's mouth. You know, the reasons why someone might want to be matched with someone are many and varied. So our job is just to encourage them to talk and work it and work through whether they might be a good match or not. Have you got any, how could we get the word out about this? Is this something that is it talking with people like yourselves about this project and trying to see if there are people you'd be happy to discuss with this, or is it the usual newspaper, putting out the newspapers, etc.? This has been a bit of a tricky one for us to get our heads around. You know, how do we show this as a viable, you know, something even just to consider? You know, not necessarily have to go through with it. But have you got any thoughts on how we get the word out around this as being something within the Herbert catchment for farmers to think about?
I think the first point of call is advisors, accountants, lawyers, and financial advisors. I suppose local publications.
I suppose my concern with the paper is to put it in a paper, it's more of an advert sale rather than a solution. You're trying to sell a product rather than provide advice on a solution. And I mean, the accountants deal with their clients yearly. Solicitors, we don't get that regular contact. They'll ultimately come and talk to us when they get to this point. But generally, it's probably the accountants and financial advisors would be your first point of call, because they're seeing their clients regularly every year, based on.
So, can I ask a question? We had 40 aspiring farmers in this room 2 years ago, mighty young people to get on the farm. If they did a pitch and had it available sitting there, how do we get that pitch? They're going to do a video, a 3-minute video, and say, I'm here, this is what I want to do, this is what I want. Where do we get that out to?
I was going to say that's a good problem is not that end. I think
The
people.
other end, really trying to get the other end to actually have a look at these guidelines that I've been. So actually, maybe I'll put mine down and check it in and see if there is anything that we can do. It may not be, it may be, but how do we get them to talk to each other? At the moment, we've got these 40 items, we go and these ones here, not sure they will actually be or how they're going to be or what they're going to do. And maybe it might be a catalyst to say, I actually want to have a chat to Jay Wallace or Fred Jones, so I think I might be able to work with them and they might actually be able to take my farm somewhere that I can't do it. How do we get those ones together? Do we just post them somewhere? Do we give them to you as advisors and say, hey, here's a USB with a whole heap of young people that are keen? Have a look through and see what that.
Probably from a client perspective, if you were trying to get out of farming, some people are a little bit hesitant to say, I want to get out of farming, because then everyone, all the buzzards will be around trying to get their farm.
Yeah.
So perhaps if the advisors had access to that, they know their clients over the time, they'll start having a conversation about, I'm going to start looking at getting out. I don't have family that want to come to the farm. And probably from that, you've got the opportunity. Perhaps the advisors could have information rights for their own clients with that.
So if we gave you, say, a USB with 5 or 10 displaying farmers saying, one key on here, here's my 3-minute pitch, you can just hand them out to whoever your clients are and say, hey, there's some young people who can, and wherever you have a look, if you're happy, then we'll go from there.
But it's probably also of their own to know that this other option exists rather than just the wholesale client take the money and run. So that's how you get a link that between it and from the accounts, but also with us seeing a lot of people every day, how you manage that and have that conversation that everyone I've spoken to, they all want to get out of farming, they all want to do this, but their farms aren't for sale. And so, that's probably, a lot of people feel it but until the mindset is, time to write, you can have conversations with people, you can have that discussion. Great, there's another option available. I was thinking maybe saying somewhere, and I was just me thinking out loud, is can this be applied to in-house family transfer? So not necessarily to an external party, but someone, father, wants to transfer to the farmer's son, let's say, for example, doesn't have the resources, dad just can't give dad the farm because he needs money, mum and dad need money to live. Is that a possibility under this model? Yeah, it is.
Sorry, I did mute myself. No, I love that discussion. Like even our last pitching event, our last cultivator, we had one farmer pull out halfway through because he told his dad he was developing a pitch to get an investor to back him on his farm. And his dad he said, what? Hang on. Nah, you should take the family farm. So just by the act of this aspiring farmer pulling a proposal together, it opened opportunities just within their family, which is really interesting. But this concept, absolutely can be applied to people outside of family or inside. We're finding it's a really good conversation starter at the very least.
We often hear about farming tricks that we have. First thing is gifting, and then you go, oh, that's great. What do you guys have live on? Perhaps that might just open the door with that angle. Stan, with in previous your matches there, how have you linked up with that other side, that Asian farmer that wants to get off? Like, what have you used? Is it just the social media networks, or have there been other programs similar to this?
That's just how did we get the word out? Is that what you said? Basically?
Yeah, how have you done it in the past in Victoria and New South Wales?
Yep. Well, we did one in Gundawindi the other day, about 8,000 acres, and that was someone who'd their daughter basically had been following us for 3 years, and finally they convinced their parents to have a chat, and the parents actually thought we were a scam and had to do a lot of research to see where we were coming from, and but we've made a really amazing match there, and they've been really very positive. So we primarily do social media, and that's a lot for aspiring farmers, but we're finding retiring farmers do get that content, and that's a lot of it is probably from their family as well, sharing it. But we have found that, you know, traditional newspapers and traditional media and radio have been really powerful for retiring farmers to, you know, have that third party, you know, their that legitimacy that this isn't just a fly by the seat of the pants sort of idea. But mainly social media, which has led to getting some traditional media, which is great for retiring farmers, we've found.
Yeah, exactly. How would you like that?
No, just like to have it about, just to say there's opportunity and they have to come. Yeah, it's not just open, just don't put an X in it. But have a few, or something.
So we've got a website.
Yeah.
Actually developing now. Is have a project called
Yeah.
we will profiles, is that what you're suggesting?
That eventually, I would support, especially our farmers at the moment, not too many people on the internet. Some are, but some aren't. Just giving them a flyer or something, if they want more information, then come in and have it. Then they can start getting profiles. Just don't give it all the information out. But because you're going to have more information, obviously, we have clients that we know in mind. But sometimes it's a little flyer or something. At least they'll come here interested. What the hell is this?
Well, what I'm saying is having these foreign stuff. They'll turn up here. But the retiring ones, we're not concerned. We probably don't think that will turn up. So I be all stuff. Everybody knows that their farms are picking, and then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, we're coming in. Whereas we need to, I think Sam's presentations, the confidentiality is really important, especially for retiring farmers, is that probably want to do some more let's say, my interest in that one, and how we do that next step with them is probably important. So I think
more get them here one on one, or meet Sam. I wouldn't have them all in the room. I'll just get them in, even get some names and do one on ones with Sam. And then if you have a few.
What's your suggestion is maybe Sam, now that the borders are clear, is that you come up and actually sit down in the room with a retiring farmer and explain options with them. Is that what you're suggesting? On a one-on-one basis.
And then the girl can read their
They can bring a group of people, the family, whoever they, but one-on-one is not the whole. I agree with you, you can't just get these people, because word of mouth here as well. Because, yeah.
No, I'd love to get up. Yeah, spend a week or so and have those booked in. Yeah.
We get Sam, what I'm hearing is that we have like a weekly Sam comes up and people can book in at different times. Advertise the categorisation with a course with the three representative groups. James, you're out and about regularly, so others who are out and about seeing roles regularly, and you guys should be required to say, hey, you want to book in, here's a link or a phone number to ring, book in meet someone. Is that what you're suggesting? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, the Americans come here and bought a lot of farms, obviously. So they all went for sale.
Yeah.
They weren't all for sale, and eventually they went around, they picked what they wanted, and they got farms. So them farmers, or some of them often wouldn't even sell, even if they were client. Or when they offered a few $1 million, they changed their mind pretty quickly. So they might see this as out of town, hopefully, sort of project that might actually jog some conversation with people. Yeah. Some of them were older farmers, but some were up around 70 or 80s. Some were 60s. I'm just saying, and the problem here has always been that the 80-year-old is giving it to the 60-year-old, and then the 60-year-old is going to give it to the 40-year-old. So that is a problem we have here. So, and obviously the 60-year-old waits 20 years, then he's 80 again, then he gives it down. And that's a huge problem. Yeah. You can see that solicitors can't see. Well, we've got to somehow break the model if we could.
How do you make money out of Sam?
Say that again, sorry.
What do you get out of what's your fee structure or?
What do we get out? My wife asks me that all the time, but we've got a grant, so we can cover our time basically for this, and we've got the a bit of money for HCPSL and for Impact Ag and a few other little advisors here and there. But our bigger vision is that we want to, we make a matchmaking fee, but we won't for this project. But that's sort of our model ongoing, is when we match people, we do a matchmaking fee, which is around $4,000. But I think we might be doing it free. We're just still figuring out a whole business model. We're probably doing that for free from here on in. I think where we will make money in the future is through these cultivator programs, where we'll run them with hundreds of farmers every year across Australia and put them in front of investors and get these investors to be matched. I think that'll be our core model going forward. In order to get more farmers, that's our number one. We just need to get more farmers thinking like this, because we need more case studies so that more people are willing to think about it. So right now, our focus for 2020 and 2021 is we just want more case studies so that we have a business here for the next 50 years. So right now, for this specific one, we have a little bit of money coming in from the grant. But other than that, the farmers won't be charged anything from this program. Other than the cultivators, they'll pay around $1,500 for the young farmers to be part of the program to help us cover advisors.
You might explain that to the group, what the young farmers have actually got to pay and do.
Yeah, so they'll be paying $1,500 to be part of the pitching program, which will happen from Feb till April. And that's weekly 2-hour sessions working through their farm proposal. And we've got advisors coming in to help pull that together for them, and a coach as well. And as well as working with yourself, Lawrence and Ali, around the technical requirements around improving farming practices around water quality as well. So it's quite an intensive sort of program. And out of that, we hopefully have some really polished proposals and a 3-minute video that we then take to the retiring farmers. I guess we wanted the aspiring farmers to be on the front foot. They've probably got the most to gain out of all of this. And so how do we encourage them and get them to show they want it and use it as a carrot to attract the farmers? We also know that out of this program, people get so many new ideas and motivation, and they'll keep uncovering their own opportunities, whether they are matched here or not. So we just found it's just a super positive thing to do, to get these aspiring farmers to promote themselves, basically.
Any more comments or feedback?
Will we succeed? Will it work?
Pick up our district.
It's a different one too. That's why I asked what you charge and what you do.
I couldn't hear all that, sorry, but I heard that very last bit.
Well, that's why I was asking about the fees, because when you've got your cost of production here, which is pretty easy to work out, and then as soon as you're adding on, whether it be leasing, paying investors, whatever your agent is, and especially on small farms, you don't have the scale. It's not a high cash flow commodity, and it's going to be a challenge.
No, that's right. And that's for us in general. How do we make this a really simple thing? Like, we should just be a marketplace as a business where people come in and get connected, charge a very, very small fee and go off. Like, that's hopefully our model. We get it. Farming is, a hard thing to make viable. So we don't want to be skimming off all this money off it. So for us, we're hoping it's going to make this really cheap for farmers, other than, their own advisors as needed. But yeah, completely get that as well. So, and love your advice as well, how we should message this, and even thoughts on our business model as well, as we keep going to make sure this does stays viable for forever. Like, we think we're on a winner here. We just need to get more matches. What was that to me, Ali?
We might wrap up. There's no more questions. If these advice want further info, is it best to contact you for one-on-one chat? That's the last that I'm interested. Sam's around for a one-on-one chat. I might log you in. Yep, he's nodding.
Thank you, everyone. This is a joint project that we're doing technical support because on our side, we believe at some stage, all these exploring farms will actually become farms. So our role is really helping. We control the pest control priorities and stuff like that. Sam is really, he's the lead on the project and it's really bringing new concepts and now the training with the exploring farms and go through to actually put the picture up and say, I'll be interested and hopefully some of the exploring farms might consider them as an option. So thanks for your time today. We're trying to keep it short and sharp.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And did everyone listen to the
Yeah.
Everyone's small lunch.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it. I hope lunch is great. Thank you for your attention and for watching this video. Click here or somewhere to watch more of our videos. If you're new here, please do subscribe. We want more of your attention. We want to get you inspired to get onto your farm. Let's get you farming.